Tonight, inshallah ta'ala, we continue the Seerah of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, and we had stopped last week just before they left for the battle of Mu'tah, Ghazwat Mu'tah or Ma'rakat Mu'tah. And as I pointed out to you, this is the first major battle that would occur without the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam being with them. He would send alayhi salatu wasalam saraya, a lot of them. I don't talk about the saraya in these sessions because there's too many of them, and there's usually not a lot of stories attached to them, so we kind of leave them out. But if you study Seerah academically, then you have to go through the number of saraya that he sent, where he sent them to alayhi salatu wasalam. And Seerah is basically a small group of warriors or soldiers, something between, tops would be maybe 500, 600 people, and he would send with them an amir, like someone would be in charge, and they would have a specific task. They would go neutralize a threat or scout out in an area. They would perform something and then come back. So he did this all the time, alayhi salatu wasalam. And any time, the way it went by the historians or the scholars of Seerah is that if the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam was with the group, you called a ghazwa, and if he was not with the group, you called a sariyah. And then Mu'tah came along, and Mu'tah became a bit confusing because Mu'tah was a full-blown battle, and it was probably the largest number of Muslims in an army up till that moment. 3,000 people assembled. That's the highest ever, right? That's way more than Badr, way more than Uhud, way more than Khandaq, way more than Umrah when they went for Sulh Hudaybiyah and afterwards. So this was the highest number. And the Prophet ﷺ, he treated it a little bit differently, so they call it in the books Ghazwat Mu'tah, even though he himself ﷺ was not physically there with them. And of course this was the beginning of the Prophet ﷺ's efforts to hand over the baton, kind of get the Sahaba in a mindset that you're going to have to do a lot more of these. Like you're going to be in situations where you have to figure it out, and I won't be around forever. And the concept of succession planning, you find it very clearly in the Prophet ﷺ's life, even though he doesn't necessarily coin the phrase. But he does perform a lot of it. And he talks about the concept of istikhlaf, which is kind of what it is. Istikhlaf, or the concept of khalifa, is succession, really. That's why if you were to go to the dictionary and take the word khalifa and ask what is the literal translation, it'll be successor. Someone who comes later, someone who takes upon themselves the responsibility on behalf of someone else. That's what succession is. So the Prophet ﷺ carried the hum of the ummah, right, from a political perspective, and then when he passed away, someone else had to succeed him in doing that. He needed a successor to come after him to carry the hum or the weight or the burden of this ummah on his behalf, alayhi salatu wasalam. Then when that person passed away, then someone else has to do it, going on and on. And of course it has other meanings like stewards, like stewardship and whatnot, and I've talked about that in different sessions as well. He would point out, alayhi salatu wasalam, the leaders of the battle, or the commanders, starting with Zayd ibn Haritha, his adopted son, followed by Ja'far ibn Abi Talib, his cousin, who was probably the person who looked the most like him, alayhi salatu wasalam. If you were to study the historical records, they seem to still feel that Ja'far was the most similar in resemblance to the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam physically. And then Abdullah ibn Rawaha, one of the three poets that he had, alayhi salatu wasalam. The reason that this battle had to occur was because he had sent out, alayhi salatu wasalam, messengers to the different kings in the regions, and I talked about this point a few weeks ago. He had sent out messengers to address the leaders of the land. Almost every king or major leader in the land, the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam had a messenger sent to him with a message, with the official prophetic seal, right, Muhammad Rasulullah, written from the bottom to the top. And within it, he would call them to Islam, explain the basics of what Islam was about, and offer them peace, or offer them the deen. And he sent Al-Harith ibn Umayr al-Azdi radiallahu anhu to Sahibi Busra, one of the kings of Al-Ghasasina, who had alliances with the Roman Byzantine Empire, and they murdered him, unfortunately. So the Prophet ﷺ moved this army in retaliation and in response to this despicable move that they made, which is murdering this young man. And as I pointed out last time, that the moment the enemy decides that they're not going to follow the internationally agreed upon rules, then there's really no space for negotiations anymore. when they start doing that. And this is the only time you'll find the Prophet ﷺ stop speaking and puts together an army. This is the only time you find him do that. It's when the people in front of him are breaking rules that that means you don't have the basic ethics of decency anymore, and there's no space for us to talk anymore. So he would move an army, and he did this also to honor the life and of this young man, Al-Harith bin Umayr. He was not a young man of status. He was not of nobility. He was not of wealth. We don't know his father. He's not someone who comes from a great family. He's not actually an early Muslim or anything. He's just a young Muslim. That's all. I don't know much about him. I don't really have a lot of information to share with you to describe anything about him, radiallahu anhu. But he was nonetheless a Muslim, and that's all that was needed. An oppression occurred upon a Muslim, the Prophet ﷺ was going to move an army for him. And I think that sent a message. And I know it did. I know that the followers of the Prophet ﷺ, the Muslims in general, felt very differently about their deen and about their country and about their story once they saw what happened in Mu'tah. That's how valuable they are. They're extremely valuable to their leader. If one of them was to be murdered that way, then he would move an army for them, alayhi salatu wasalam. He would not brush it off and say, well, the enemy is very powerful. It's the Roman Empire, ya Shaykh. We just figured out how to stop fighting with Quraysh yesterday. We want us to move an army. But he did, alayhi salatu wasalam. And that sent a very clear message, not only to Al-Harith, his family and his mother, but also to all the young Muslims. And it's because of this, they lived for Islam, because they felt valued within their community. And I think there's something to learn here for us as Muslims. We have to value one another. We have to value the people around us, and we have to support them, and we have to stand by them. And it's not easy. It's not always easy, because people make mistakes, and it's not always something that's feasible. But we have to do better than what we're doing right now. You often find, unfortunately, we often find that we are much more likely to support others, or to bring our best behavior with others, or to defend others, but not the people that are right beside us, not those who are a part of our struggle, those who are part of our own community, and that's important for it to change. Before they left, a man from Ahl Kitab would bring to Zayd and Ja'far and Ibn Rawaha draw their attention to the fact that the Prophet ﷺ counted 3 commanders. He would only do that if they're all going to die. He was hoping to scare them. He was hoping to bring some degree of decrease of morale. However, Zayd, Ja'far did not respond to him at all, and they went on their way. As they were leaving, the people of Medina would make dua for them. Ayyadakumullahu, hafizakumullah, raddakumullahu salihin. May Allah stand by you. May Allah preserve you. May Allah return you to us in a state of piety, in a state of goodness. May you come back, inshallah, and you've done your job and performed your mission. Don't come to us non-salihin. Don't come to us don't come back if you're going to come back. The concept that existed in the Muslim community was very unique. I don't know if we have the same, when someone's going on in a battle, you're like, just come back alive to me. No, that's not what the wives would say. That's not what the women or men who were behind in Medina would say. No, if you're going to come back, you come back to me with honor. You come back and you've honored your commitment. You've honored the teaching, the command of your messenger, alayhi salatu wasalam. Don't come back alive with your head between your, with your head held low and your tail between your no, don't do that. So this was an important piece. You see that what I'm talking about right now is actually not hypothetical. We're actually going to see it in the story itself. So as they left, they start going to the north. And this is a very simple, kind of where the Roman Empire is in red and the Farisi Empire is in yellow, and you can see where Medina is. And the one in blue over there, at the end of the lower part of the red map, there's a blue circle somewhere in modern day Jordan today, and that's where they would go. Here's another. You can see where Tabuk is. We're going to talk about Tabuk at the end of the Seerah. And Tabuk was actually closer than Mu'tah. Mu'tah was much farther away. And Mu'tah exists today. You can go to Jordan and you can see it. And I've been to the area because there's really nothing. There's nothing there. They just have this very old, shabby-looking sign that hasn't been changed in the last maybe 150 years. The sign is horrible, and it just has been on Mawqa' Ma'arakat Mu'tah. This is where it happened, and you have all these sheep and a masjid. There's a masjid there to commemorate the memory of it, but there's nothing else. But it's actually quite interesting to go and see the area that this occurred in, and it makes sense when you go see it from a perspective of understanding what the details of this story. So if you ever go to Jordan, maybe ask about it. So Zayd moves forward. He moves north. It takes a while. Obviously, this is a very far. It's over 1,000 kilometers. They make it close to Mu'tah. They're not there yet. They make it close. All of the eyes, the spies that he has, radiyallahu anhum, bring back the information. Now, the historical records are quite. I can't validate them. I can't validate the numbers. I don't know. But the numbers that are most conservative in discussing how many warriors there were in the opposing army. Because the opposing army, we know for sure, was not just from the Arabian kingdom, Al-Ghasasina. We know that they asked the Romans for more soldiers for them. They asked for help, they asked for aid. So the Romans provided it. Why? Because there was a myth about these Muslims, that they are entering these wars time and time again, and outnumbered 1 to 3 and 1 to 4 and 1 to 5, and they're winning, and they're beating their enemies quite swiftly. Even the Battle of Uhud, which is the fluke amongst all of them. Still, when you look at the Battle of Uhud, they won early on. It was a mistake that was made later that caused it to change. So there was a little bit of a myth going on, that these few numbers of Muslims have caused all this havoc in Arabia. No one can seem to put a stop to them. Quraysh is failing. Quraysh was known, obviously, because they were the stewards of the Kaaba, and all of the other surrounding kingdoms knew about the Prophet ﷺ, and of course word travels and rumors spread, and there was some myths about it. So Al-Ghasasina were very scared. They were scared, and they didn't want to fight alone, so they asked for the cavalry, basically. The most conservative numbers we have is 100,000 on the other side of this. The more typical number you'll find is 250 actually. It's much higher than that. I think it's probably less. I think it's probably maybe between 50 to 75,000, wallahu alam, based on kind of studies done by more recent and scholars of history. I think it's more around 60 to 75,000, wallahu alam. I don't know. Anyways, we know that the numbers were the difference was humongous. Was not reasonable. Like 300 to 1,000 in Badr, for example. Okay, 700 to 3,000, fine. And 1,500 to 10,000, all right. But 3,000 to 100,000, this is not, how does this work? Is this even, how is this going to work? It doesn't seem that it's possible. So Zayd would stop when he found out the numbers, and he would call his army, 3,000. It's the biggest army they've ever had, so they were a little bit, they were feeling good. But then he explains, here's what we're headed towards. And he's explaining the numbers. He's telling them this is how much we think they are. And they're like, what? Yeah, they asked for medad from the Romans, and the Romans sent, they matched their numbers, and now they have this. Now. So now they're thinking, we're not prepared for 100,000. At least that's the most conservative number that the Sahaba heard then. Whether that's the number on the other side or not is up for debate, but that's what the number that they were told about. 100K, and there's only 3 people fighting 100. Right? This is not, there's no فَقَالَ أَشِيرُوا عَلَيَّ أَيُّهَا النَّاسِ Sayyidina Zayd, right? Of course, following in the footsteps of the Habib alayhi salatu wasalam, to say the same thing as the Prophet alayhi salam would always do the same thing. أَشِيرُوا عَلَيَّ أَيُّهَا النَّاسِ, so people, grant me your consultation. He did the same thing, radiallahu anhu. And I love this because you get to see how he educated them. It wasn't just that he did it. No, he made sure that they learned to do it as well. It was passed along. That this is how you lead. You stop when there's a decision. When there's a decision that's going to affect everyone and is going to have detrimental effects on people, then you have to run it by. You have to see what it is that they want to do. You have to consult with them. Ashiru alayhi, tell me what you think. So they start going back and forth. It takes a while. They come down to 3 options. There are 3 options here. Either we go back to the Prophet ﷺ and we tell him we couldn't go through with your command because we were outnumbered beyond imagination. Because this is a situation that was not foreseen. They can say, no, the Prophet ﷺ did not see this. He didn't think 100,000. So his command does not apply since this change is that big. And that's an ijtihad, it's an acceptable one. We do it all the time in Islam. Or we ask him, alayhi salam, we send back asking for more troops. Yeah. Or we keep on moving forward. So they start discussing, well, the first one is going to look very bad. We did not obey the Prophet ﷺ, and we did not avenge our brother. And it's going to seem that it's a cowardly move, and it does not represent us as Muslims. I mean, it doesn't make sense. Well, ask for him to send us troops. What troops? We are the troops. We know what we have in Medina. There's no one left. There's no one left to send. What, maybe a few hundred people, but then Medina is completely empty. There'll be no one there, and there'll be a sitting duck for any tribe to come and raid it. So there's just no one. This is the biggest army you've ever had. So Abdullah bin Rawaha would stand, he would speak. And he'd say, Ya ayyuhan nas, wallahi ma allati takhafuna minha illa allati kharajtum min ajliha. Indeed, that which you are all expressing fear from is the thing that you left Medina hoping for. Meaning shahada. Like you're all talking, fearing that you go into this battle and you die. Well, the thing that you seem to be scared of and you want to go back for is running away from death. Isn't that what you left for? فَامْضُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ وَامْضُوا أَمْرَ رَسُولِ اللَّهِ. Walk in the sake of Allah and see through the command of your Prophet ﷺ. وَتَوَكَّلُوا عَلَى الْحَيِّ الَّذِي لَا يَمُوتُ. And perform your tawakkul. He gave them a very powerful. He's a poet, so he's a very strong orator. And he gave a khutbah, radiallahu anhu. And as he did that, كَبَّرَ النَّاسِ. And there was a unanimous decision that we move forward, and they moved forward. Sayyidina Zayd is not naive though. So he's looking. He's thinking that this is not, we can't meet them in open land. In an open field, it will be a 5-minute battle. We'll all be gone. We have to find something else. So they find a town called Mu'tah that is situated perfectly between two big mountains. The Romans are going to be coming from the north of that town, and they are coming from the south of that town. It takes a while to go around, similar to the issue of Uhud. Like if they want to go around it and flank, it's going to take some time. The city is, it's an empty city. I mean, Medina Mahjura, as they say. Meaning it's a city that was once populated, no longer populated anymore. It's just ruins. But these ruins offer a lot of protection. Meaning you have all these rooftops and spaces where you can defend yourself. And you can't fit 100,000 people in that. It's impossible. It's not enough space. So if they situate themselves there appropriately, their enemy is forced to only confront them with a certain number. It's going to be more than 3,000, but it won't be 100,000. It'll be something much less than that. Something that maybe they can manage. They can maybe manage those numbers, because maybe 25 to 30,000 people can fit in Mu'tah all at once. The rest have to be behind because there's not enough space. Yeah? And to flank is going to take too long. So they would situate themselves in Mu'tah, and that would be the plan. The Romans sent a leader. So the Ghasasina were not actually leading this battle because they asked for help. So help was sent with someone to lead the battle. So they were no longer leaders. So they would come and they don't know anything about the Muslims, which was an advantage. The Ghasasina, the Arab, they knew a little bit about the Prophet ﷺ. They knew about what the Muslims what they were capable of. The Romans weren't. So it was a barakah. It was a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that the leader is someone who underestimated the Muslims. And thought them and saw them to be worthless and not not worthy of any form of planning. They are much less than us. This should be easy. So he comes, he finds that they have set camp in the southern part of the city of Mu'tah. So he enters from the north, and the battle begins. He sends people to go and flank. However, the people he sends to go and flank will take way too long. By the time they've flanked, the battle is going to be over. Like by the time they make it around, the battle's going to be done. And they begin the fighting. And the Muslims are successful for that first day, and the second day, and third day. Some narrations say up to 6 days, are capable of holding their lines. Very few Muslims died in Mu'tah, very few. Ibn Hisham points out 12. Some go up to 100. Like some historians will go up to 100 in terms of numbers, but regardless, it's a very small number. The Romans, on the other hand, was a very different story. They were stacking up their bodies. It was a stack up. They were falling quickly, and they were falling in abundance. The Muslims were much more prepared, they were better trained, and they're situated in a space where they're much more protected. So after a few days of doing this, the leader of the Romans said, this is ridiculous. We're losing numbers. This is not, we're losing too many people here, and we're not seeing to making a dent in what they're doing. Obviously, the Romans are changing. Like the army's big enough that people fight in a specific area for a certain period of time. When they get tired, they have someone to substitute them. The Muslims don't. This is it. They had to be there, awake, fighting all throughout. The amount of sleep they were getting was very, very abysmal. So what the Roman leader noticed, and they say that this was the mashura, or the consultation of one of the leaders of the Ghasasina, is that really, if you want to shake their foundation, you have to take down Hamil al-Raya. For the Arabs, in warfare, in Arab warfare, the flag carrier is an important individual on the battlefield. Usually the commander carries the flag. It's, as long as the flag is up, you have some degree of comfort that you're doing well. When the flag falls, then that is an indication that things are not going well. And the Arabs used to use that as a reason or a way to say, I'm going to stay versus I'm going to run back. And that's why, that's karr and far, this concept in Arabian, pre-Islamic Arabian warfare. Is that karr, you would all run forward and raid the enemy. And then far is when you run back. Now, how would they know it's time to run back if they saw the flag topple down? They run back because the guy with the flag, who's supposed to be the most powerful, the most protected, the commander, it shouldn't fall. So who's carrying the flag? Obviously, it's the commander. Sayyidina Zayd ibn Haritha is holding the command. So the plan from the commander is that all of your efforts, focus it on taking out this man. Topple this flag. Let's see if that makes a difference. Because what they've been doing for the last few days, and there are actually details of what happened each day that I don't think interest most of us because we're not experts in warfare. But a lot of different strategies were tried or attempted, and every time they tried a strategy, Sayyidina Zayd was ready with his counter to keep them back. So he was very successful in holding this line. They were never able to penetrate the city and make it to the other side or actually push the Muslims back. It's quite fascinating. So they all go after Sayyidina Zayd. You can imagine that sixth day of war was nothing but a stampede of human bodies moving towards one individual. They just wanted to take out this one man. And of course, when you talk about numbers that are up to 100,000 versus a few thousand people, they will overpower them with bodies and numbers. And they were able to do that. And the narrators of this battle would point out, قال فما بقي في جسد زيد موضعا إلا وفيه ضربة سيف أو ضربة رمح أو مصاب أو موقع سهم. In his body, radiallahu anhu, there was no space left in the front part of his body except either an arrow, a spear, or a sword had been because that was it. They were just all the arrows towards one person, all of the spears, all of the swords. People would run until they were able to radiallahu anhu fell shaheed, carrying the raya. Before it toppled down, Sayyidina Ja'far would pick it up, because this is how succession happens, that you don't let the flag fall. So he picks it up radiallahu anhu immediately. And he holds it, and of course this high pressure of human presence is still towards that flag, trying to get that flag on the ground. So they go after Sayyidina Ja'far, and Sayyidina Ja'far went through something a little bit even more horrific. Sayyidina Ja'far, at that point, it was, the penetration was heavier, so there was more bodies from the enemy in front of him, and they were able to take out, they chopped off his right arm, radiallahu anhu, which is holding the flag, so he would hold on. The reason we know this, by the way, is because as this was happening over in Mu'tah, the Prophet ﷺ is standing on the minbar in Medina, and he's broadcasting it live. He's standing in Medina ﷺ telling people what's happening. It's like watching the thing. Here's what's happening. فَدَخَلُوا فِي مَدِينَةِ مُؤْتَةٍ وَكَذَا وَفَعَلُوا كَذَا. And he's telling them, this is what's happening. قَالَ يَحْمِلُ الرَّايَةَ زَيْدُ بْنُ حَارِثَةٍ. And the Prophet ﷺ, all throughout this last piece of his broadcast, is sobbing in tears, ﷺ, because on that day he will lose. He will suffer great loss. He will suffer great personal loss, ﷺ, because Zayd was the most beloved person to him, ﷺ. We know that. He's up there with Sayyidina Ali and Sayyida Fatima and Zahra and Khadija. He's up there with these, and Sayyidina Abu Bakr. These great names that existed at the beginning, Sayyidina Zayd was the first Mawla to accept Islam, one of the first 4 people to accept Islam historically. And he was the closest thing he had to a son, alayhi salatu wasalam. And he saw him as his son. And he saw his children as his grandchildren, alayhi salatu wasalam, even though they're not related blood-wise. So he's speaking, قال ويحمل الراية زيد فيقاتل فقاتل حتى قتل وسقط شهيدا صدره إلى الأمام. He would fight until he fell, and he falls forward. This was a way for Arabs. I mean, he didn't turn his back and run at the end, because look, it's all fun and games until your life is on the line. And it's all just talk. And once your life is on the line, that's when things change. It gets very serious the moment you feel your life is threatened. So for him to stand there, radiallahu anhu, and not retreat and not turn his back and not run, when they apply this humongous amount of pressure on him, radiallahu anhu, is bravery. So he stood his ground and he fell. قال فيأخذ الراية جعفر بن أبي طالب. And then he would point out, radiallahu alayhi salatu wasalam, and he took his right arm. فأخذها باليسرى. He take it with his left arm. They take his left arm. فيأخذها بين عضديه, meaning whatever is left of his 2 arms, he would bring those together and he would hold the flag nice and close to his chest, radiallahu anhu, until they bring this mountain of a man down. قال فقاتل حتى قتل أراه في الجنة قد أبدله الله بجناحين يطير بهما في الجنة حيث شاء. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I see him, he's in Jannah, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for what he had to endure during this battle, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him back his arms and gave him 2 wings. He can fly in Jannah and see whatever he wants in the meantime. قال فأخذ الراية من بعدهم عبد الله بن رواحة فتلكأه نيها. And hold that piece for a moment. So after Ja'far fell, now the 3rd commander is Abdullah ibn Rawaha, the poet. Now Abdullah, all throughout the battle, of course he's the one who moved them forward towards this. And as they entered the battle, he would start with the chant that يا حبذا الجنة واقترابها باردة وطيب شرابها والروم روم قد دنا عذابها كافرة بعيدة أنسابها علي إن لاقيتها ضرابها. He would sing out poetry that the Sahaba would sing out during the battle. This became iconic because it would continue to be sung for years and years later. It would continue to be sung in the battles that came later, during the Prophet ﷺ's life, and later after that in Qadisiyya and Yarmouk. These would be iconic verses of poetry that they would say. So he had taught people to say these things, because Abdullah, I'm going to be talking about him, subhanAllah, in the Tazkiyah real soon, because he's a really, really good example for mortality. In my opinion, he's an amazing example. It's just subhanAllah, just a facilitation that it's lining up that I'm talking about today. He's someone who struggled with mortality. He had a little bit of fear of death inside of him. He was not a known warrior. He was very intelligent, obviously, and he had a lot of experience, but he struggled with the mortality piece. So because of that, I don't say he overcompensated, but he pushed people and he pushed himself, and he would say these words. But then at that moment, when the raya now is no longer held and someone has to hold it on, for a second there, he hesitated. For a second, just something that no one noticed. No one noticed this. No one in the battlefield noticed that Abdullah ibn Rawaha hesitated. It's not like he had a panic attack and required intervention and a few days admission to come back. No, he just, for a second in his heart and his mind, he struggled, and then he went forward, but he struggled. And amongst the things that he was heard saying in those last moments of his life, قال أقسمت يا نفس لتنزلنه أو لتكرهنه ما لي أراك تكرهين الجنة. You say, I swear, O nafs, that you are going to go and pick that up. You will do it voluntarily, or I will coerce you to do it. What's wrong with you, nafs? Why does it seem that you hate Jannah? ما لي أراك تكرهين الجنة إن أجلب الناس طار الرنة. He would say these beautiful pieces of poetry that you can go back and ما أنت إلا نطفة في شنة. He gives these poetry reminding himself, what am I? I'm just I'm something simple. Why is my life so important? Why am I acting like it's unacceptable for me to lose my life for something bigger than me? He's speaking to himself, radiallahu anhu, as he takes the raya and he stands his ground. And it's interesting because The Sahaba were human beings. These lessons and these stories are for us not to judge them or to rank them, but rather to learn from them. He's a human being who had that struggle, that fear. He saw Sayyidina Zayd fall. He saw Sayyidina Ja'far. He knew what was coming. He knew what was. He knew what he was going to get into. But that flag can't toggle. The flag can't topple. It can't fall. But for a second there, he hesitated. Then he picked it up, so it didn't fall. And he fought. يقول رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فقاتل حتى قتل أراه مع صاحبيه في الجنة إلا أن بسريره زرارا عن سرير صاحبيه. I put the poetry. I didn't know. I actually forgot that. I put the poetry here. These are beautiful. يا نفس إلا تقتلي تموتي هذا حمام الموت قد صليتي وما تمنيتي فقد أعطيتي إن تفعلي فعله ما هديتي. He would talk to himself saying, "Oh nafs, if you don't get killed today, you'll just die later. Here is the moment of an honorable death that's ahead of you. What you've always hoped for with the shahadas, you've been given. If you do the actions of the two people in front of you, then you will be in a good position. You're guided." He's speaking to himself. This is what the Sahaba around him who are pushing back are hearing him say. Right? He's strengthening himself because it's a moment of fear. And the Prophet ﷺ would say, "Izwiraran an sariri sahibaihi." That I see them all in Jannah, lying, reclining with on their beds or in their couches, places of comfort. And I see Sayyidina Zayd and Ja'far right beside each other, and I see Abdullah right beside them, just a little bit lower, a little bit. فقالوا يا رسول الله وأي زوار هذا? And why are you pointing at فقال صلى الله عليه وسلم تلكأ هنيها. You can take that phrase and you can, hang it up above your bed. He pointed out, alayhi salatu wasalam, the man hesitated for a second. Hunayha is like a breath, less than a breath. Less than a breath. It's less than a full breath, right? That's a breath. Hunayha is just like a part of a breath, millisecond. Tarakka, he hesitated for just a second, and then he picked it up. Zayd did not hesitate. He stood their ground. When it fell, Sayyidina Ja'far took it right away. Didn't hesitate. Abdullah bin Rawaha, for a second, just a millisecond, he hesitated. They picked it up. No one noticed. It's not like the flag fell and they picked it up. No. He just, for a moment there. Talakka. He hesitated for a second. And I wonder if this small amount of time of hesitation had Sayyidina Abdullah bin Rawaha a little bit lower than the status of his two predecessors. Imagine how many times have we hesitated to do something good? How many times have we hesitated to give sadaqah or to offer our time or to offer our voice out of fear or out of fear of poverty or fear of retaliation or fear of loss of this or fear of loss of that in our lives? And the Prophet ﷺ is speaking of someone who gave up his life. This man would not come home to his children or to his wife or to the people that he loved. He was going to die early in his life. Sayyidina Abdullah bin Rawaha was 40s, early 40s, my age. He wasn't a kid, and he wasn't an old man either. Had a lot of life ahead of him. Very capable, very talented. He was quite famous for his poetry. He could have served Islam in many ways, but that's what the Prophet ﷺ gave him. Told him, "I need you to be a commander today," and he gave up his life for it. But then, you see, what's interesting to me is that no one would have known that he hesitated had the Prophet ﷺ not told us, right? Like, how would we know? We just know that these three men stood their ground and they all died fi sabilillah as martyrs, and we would have celebrated them. And we do. We celebrate all three of them, right? And Abdullah bin Rawaha, radiyallahu anhu wardah. What I'm saying is not bringing down, lessening his status, radiyallahu anhu. He's above all of us. But the Prophet ﷺ need everyone to learn that, yes, as you move along, it gets more and more difficult. You get as much as you put in. You get out of this as much as you put into it. You go full throttle, that's what you get in terms of your ajr. You hesitate even for a hunayha, even for just a millibreath, just a second. You get less. You get 1 second less. You get a second less. You get a breath less than the person who didn't. It's very simple. Whose answer, alayhi salatu wasalam. Now, what happens there? Immediately, there is someone who's going to pick up the flag. The person who picks up the flag is Sayyidina Thabit ibn al-Aqram, radiyallahu anhu. Thabit ibn al-Aqram is an elderly gentleman with a lot of war experience, who was one of the early Sahaba from Medina who shahida Badran. He's amongst the Sahaba who fought with the Prophet ﷺ on the day of Badr. So he took the flag, not because he wanted to lead, but because he wanted to give the flag to the person that he thought was most capable of leadership at that moment. So Sayyidina Thabit would call immediately, Aina anta ya Aba Sulaiman. Aina anta ya Aba Sulaiman. He starts calling Abu Sulaiman, which is the name or the laqab of Sayyidina, or the kunya of Sayyidina Khalid ibn al-Walid. So Khalid comes, فقال لا والله أنت أولى مني فأنت رجل شهدت بدرا وقد كنت مع أعداء الله يومها. He said, no, you are more worthy of leadership than me. You are a man who stood with the Prophet ﷺ on the day of Badr. I was fighting against you that day. I'm not the right person for this. فقال بل أنت أهلها. He said, no, you are the person to do this. فما تقولون. He looked at the people around him. What do you say? فيقولون أبو سليمان أهلها. Abu Sulaiman is the person who should carry this. The Prophet ﷺ didn't give Khalid the leadership himself. He needed this to be earned by Sayyidina Khalid. In order for him to be accepted as a leader, people would have to want him. They have to call for him. And that's his hikmah, alayhi salatu wasalam. They did not force Khalid upon the Sahaba, upon Zayd and Ja'far, these early Muslims, right? Khalid accepted Islam, if you heard the story, a few months before? A few months before, that's it. You're going to put him a leader over Zayd, who accepted Islam the first day, or Ja'far, who accepted Islam the second day, and has been in Khaybar, and in Habasha for 15 years, or Abdullah ibn Rawaha, one of the earliest Muslims from Medina, or Thabit ibn al-Aqram, for example, who was one of the earliest Muslims in Medina as well. It doesn't make, it's going to offend them. So the Prophet ﷺ didn't want it to happen that way. And that's how leadership is supposed to happen. Leadership is not supposed to be something that is forced upon people. It's something that's earned amongst peers via a system of merit, if the people have the right mentality. So here's the interesting piece. If your goal is leadership, you just want to be a leader, even though you're not good at it and there's someone better, then you get it, but then you die and everyone else around you dies. If the wrong person picked up that flag that day, those 3,000, none of them would have come back. And I want you to imagine how different the Muslim story would have been if those 3,000 people did not come back. There was no one left in Medina to, it's like you press the reset button on the Prophet ﷺ's da'wah. He has to go back and do it all over again because he sent out some of the most important names. So if the wrong person picked up that flag, that would have left to the demise of everyone. And but here's the thing. Here's how the Prophet ﷺ saw it. If he sent a group of people who in their hearts, they cared more about leadership than about achieving outcomes, more about their egos of being the people who should be on top, more than making it across the finishing line or doing the right thing, then let them all die. We don't need them. If that's how they are, then might as well get rid of them. This was a very interesting, you'll find this in his life, alayhi salam. If you didn't have the ethics or the principles that were going to allow you or put you in the position to make the right decision, then there's no point in trying to, your demise is inevitable, might as well have it now. So he's going to send with them the person who can save them. If they are honest with themselves, and they are humble, and they care more about doing the right thing, then they will find him and choose him and put him and they will be saved. And if not, they want to fight over who should be, I want the sharaf or the honor of being leader, and then they all die, and then it's easier that way. But he had taught them well, alayhi salatu wasalam. So these people had no interest in that. Their egos were left behind. And that's not what they were looking for. So the moment there was no one who was assigned by the Prophet ﷺ. You know, Thabit was assigned by the leadership of the army. Zayd, Ja'far, Abdullah, they assigned Thabit. But Thabit and all those who were with him said, no, we know who we need. Ta'ala ya Khalid, you need to. And then the Prophet ﷺ, as he's going, قال فَيَأْخُذُ الرَّايَةَ سَيْفٌ مِّن سُيُوفِ اللَّهِ. And then one of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's swords will take the raya, Khalid bin Walid. يَفْتَحُ اللَّهُ عَلَى يَدَيْهِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will grant fatah through this person. So what does Khalid do? Khalid says full retreat. Retreat back to our baseline in Mu'tah, so they retreat back. Sayyidina Khalid quickly comes up with one of the most interesting plans that I think you never think of. I want you to listen to what he does. He does this. This is the 6th or 7th day of battle, and his last day of battle, basically, because of the fact that the story ends. But after 6 days of battle, all this happens. This is a big day, right? This is the biggest day. Zayd fell, Ja'far fell, two of their, and Abdullah ibn Rawaha fell. All three leaders have fallen. This is not a good day for them. Right? They've lost some lives. So Sayyidina Khalid turns to his people. قال إني أرى أننا نفذنا أمر أو وصية رسول الله عليه الصلاة. I see that we have performed we have seen through the will of the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام. 6 days of fight. We have taken from their lives way more than they've taken from us. We have put a dent into their armies. The objective, in my opinion, has been fulfilled. Do you agree? Everyone's like, yes, we agree. قال وإنا لا نفوز هذه المعركة أبدا. We will never win this. This is not winnable. The numbers are. It's impossible to win. We can't win this. Like from a military perspective, I'm telling you, we can't win this. This is not going to be won. ولا نفر. We don't want to run either. So he comes up. He puts together this plan. What's the plan? So the plan is, because the way that wars happened back then is due to lack of light, especially is that the wars would happen during the day. It's fair game right at sunrise. Then at sunset, it's just every camp protecting itself, because no one wants to raid at night because you can't see anything. It's very dark. You're carrying a little torch in your hand, and the torch, you fall in the mud, the torch goes into the mud. Now you can't see anything. Now you don't know if you're killing your friend or your foe. You don't know what you're doing anymore. So people did not, like back then, the wars didn't go throughout the night, unlike today. It's the only time the wars happen. But back then, it was not going to happen throughout the night. So they had overnight some time to see through the plan. Here's what he came up with, radiallahu anhu. He commanded the following. He said, all of the flags, the banners for the different platoons of the army. So as any army, Sayyidina Zayd had made it into different groups. There was the Muqaddimah, the Maymana, the Maysara, the Muakhira, the cavalry. Each group, each platoon, right, left, middle, back, center, forward, the cavalry, they all had banners. These banners had certain things written on them in colors. He said, repaint all of them. I don't want any reused flag. Every flag has to be changed immediately, all flags. And then he switched everyone around. So if you were fighting up front, then you were going to be in the back. If you were in the middle, you're going to be up front. If you're going to the right, you're going to be on the left. Because for these 5-6 days, it's been the same people. The Romans keep on changing, but the Muslims are the same. So the people on this side who are fighting the Muslims on this side, they know who they are. They know their faces. There's some familiarity. So he wanted to change it all around. And he commanded everyone in the army that night to use whatever water they had to wash up, to wash their faces, to cover their wounds, and to wash their clothing. Come with clothing that looks damp, that looks a little bit different. Don't come at that point. Obviously, 5-6 years of war, your clothing is filthy and it's blood stained, and it's also quite shabby. So he commanded people to so they're cleaning the Sahaba at night. They are painting flags. They are cleaning clothes. They are closing wounds. They are moving. They're moving around, getting familiar with the spaces that they didn't occupy before. You're fighting on the right all for 5-6 days. You memorize the area. And everyone here who plays Counter-Strike is looking at me. Yeah, you're right, Sheikh. I know my little place where I have to be. Yeah, it's the same thing. Wherever you are, you're moving now to a new space. You have to understand it. So they're doing all this. And he would he would put together 300 cavalry of horsemen. And he would take the 300 horsemen and agree with them on a certain strategy. He said, you're going to go and you're going to gallop as far as you can until all you see from us is what we see from you, which are dots. Like you just see, you're not recognizable anymore. Like you're at the horizon. And then they're going to run in circles for hours on their horse. They're going to run in circles for hours, making a whole lot of dust, just throwing dust into the air. And then you're going to come in 6 groups, 50 at a time. 50 at a time, you will come into the battlefield. And he told the Sahaba every time they come in, there's takbir, there's a lot of takbir, and ja al-madad. You say, the aid has come, aid has arrived. Right? So this is what we're going to do. We're going to do this 6 times in a row. The next day comes, the battle begins. Now the Romans come in, something is very different. The banners are different. The people, the people who are fighting on this side, it's different faces, different strategy, different banners. It's very peculiar. They're not sure what's going on. They have their spies looking into the horizon. They're telling their command, their officers, there's like a lot of dust and sand coming from afar. We don't know what this is. It could be the cavalry coming in. It could be another army that Muhammad is sending over. Of course, the Romans are getting scared at this point because they could barely take care of. They couldn't seem to get very far with the people that they were fighting already. For there to be more coming in, this is not something that's very uplifting for them. And they're already fighting people they don't even know because of the mix-up and the change. They're fighting people they don't know. So to them, there's already there's been some switch. They don't think it's a switch. They're thinking there's probably people have come in and the others are resting because of what's 5-6 days now. And the banners are different. So there's probably platoons from a different section of the Islamic nation, whatever. They don't know. Back then there was no Wikipedia. They had no idea. They don't know the story as I'm telling it to you. They know nothing. They know that there's no country and this country has a reputation and they don't know anything else. So it's new faces, so they're a little bit concerned. That dust coming from the horizon you can see it clearly. You can see it's not, you don't need, you can see the dust, so it's even more concerning. And then in the middle of the battle, 50 cavalry would come in. People on horses, their horses have been properly washed, and their clothes, they look new. They just arrived. These people have not been in battle. They come in, Allahu Akbar, and these. First time, second time, third time, fourth. By the sixth time, the Romans were done. Like the morale had dropped to sea level. By the sixth time the cavalry came through with the dust, with the new faces, with the new banners, with the whole confusion, and then the plan was the following. At Khalid's, when he gave his sign, they would do a complete retreat outside of Mu'tah, completely, leaving no one inside the city. Complete silence. Now the Romans are standing there. They've been pushed back. Because of the cavalry coming in 50 at a time, 50, and the Romans are getting scared, so they're coming back, and then suddenly, whoosh, no one's left. Not a soul. And they're looking, so what do we do? Do we go in? Like, do we follow them? قَالُوا لَا كَمِينَ. No, this is an ambush. This is an ambush. It's been different faces. No, we figured them out. It's different faces. It's different people. The cavalry, we can see them coming from. I know this is an ambush. We wait. But how long do we wait? As they're doing this, Khalid's already halfway to Medina. Like as they're doing this, talking, okay, ambush, we get some people to take a look. Let's give it half an hour. As they're kind of figuring out what they want to do, the Muslims have retreated and they had already made their way back halfway to Medina. They were already gone. By the time they figured out that it was that the Muslims had retreated, Khalid radiallahu anhu was already in Medina. By the time they figured out that they could no longer, that there was no one left, that this was not an ambush, Sayyidina Khalid and the army had made it back safely into Medina. And one of the most amazing military plans that you could possibly come up with, radiallahu anhu was able to save these 3,000 men from a destiny of death. Some narrations say that they took up to 50,000 of the Romans. They go up to that number, that they took out of them around 50,000. So numbers that are a little bit more conservative, I think, are more reasonable, around 10. I think it's something around 10. Which is a dent in an army of 100K, so like 10% was taken out. Interestingly enough, when they arrive in Medina, they arrive with a lot of pride that they fought well. They fought for a week. They fought for almost a week. Or actually, it's a full week, 6 days and the 7th morning, right? Because they retreat back at the end of the 7th day. So a full week they fought. They fought numbers that are unfathomable. The percentage is not reasonable in any way. And they were able to get out with very few casualties. They only lost 12 men, amongst them obviously the leaders. So they come back and they feel quite, alhamdulillah, very grateful and thankful and proud of what they've done. The people of Medina receive them by saying, Ya Furrar, O cowardly, O cowards, O those who ran away, O those who turned their backs and ran back. Ya Furrar, which is a bad thing to say, right? Because they weren't happy. How dare you? How dare you run? The Prophet ﷺ told you to go and fight and you leave and you run. The Prophet ﷺ, he smiled. قال لا بل هم الكرار إن شاء الله. No, they're the ones who fought and stayed forward. So no, it's not the case. بل هم الكرار يا خالد إنما أنت سيف من سيوف الله. Oh Khalid, you are indeed nothing else but one of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's swords on this earth. And you can see that the people of Medina had a certain understanding of things. That, how could you run? How could you be told by the Prophet ﷺ to go and stand your ground and run and fight, and then you turn back? That was their understanding of it. But the Prophet ﷺ's hikmah, or his wisdom, was that no, this is the objective was achieved. The objective of stating clearly that you cannot treat us this way, that you can't murder a Muslim because you lost your temper and think, well, it's just the Arabs, who cares? Like they can't do anything. No, we will come looking for you, and we will fight you, and we will take a bite out of you, and you will not do this again. And that was an important moment. This moment, many of the Muslim historians, especially those who are militarily inclined, will point out that Mu'tah was one of the most important battles that ever occurred, because without it, what would have happened, because here what we're doing is we're comparing other historical nations coming to strength. Whenever a nation becomes strong, the first thing that happens is that the nations around it, they raid. That's the norm. Like any nation that becomes strong and powerful, the first thing that happens is that their neighboring enemies are going to raid them, or they're going to come together to fight them. But it didn't happen with the Muslims. Like that didn't actually happen. Like the Furs and the Rum never did this. And one of the reasons that it never didn't happen is because of Mu'tah. Because Mu'tah became a part of Islamic mythology, if I can use that phrase. The story itself traveled. It traveled in every direction. The Romans spoke of it, the Persians spoke of it, the Manadira, the Ghasasina, everyone spoke of this. They spoke of the 3,000 men who pushed back a Goliath army of 100K or more, and ended up taking from them more lives by a difference of 1,000. And then they retreated safely back to the city. Retreated, not they didn't run. Running would be they are running and the other army is trying to catch up with them. No, they retreated. That army stayed there because they were confused. They stayed there for a full day. By the time they figured it out, the Muslims were already back in Medina, so they retreated and went back as well. So it was a strategical retreat from both groups. So because of this, and when the story came out that the reason that this happened, like why did this happen? Why did this fuss occur? Why did this 7-day war in this small area of Mu'tah actually happen? Oh, Sahib Busra al-Sham murdered a 19-year-old boy, messenger that he sent. So he sent an army to make up for, to punish him for doing that. No one messed with them again. No one messed with the Muslims ever again. And as the Muslim nation got stronger, they stayed away. I don't want to touch that. They don't take your offenses lightly. They're not going to be okay with you going and trying to take a bite out of them. Which brings me to talking about the battle of Khaybar. Depending on which source of Seerah you are going to study, you may find that Khaybar is talked about before Mu'tah, and you may find it talked about after Mu'tah. And there's a lot of difference of opinion among scholars regarding exactly when it happened. I tell it this way. I think this is what happened, but I could be mistaken. It could have happened a little bit earlier. The Prophet ﷺ, before Khaybar, it's an extra piece of would send Sayyidina Amr ibn al-As at the head of maybe 300 or 400 men to go and neutralize another threat from a tribe of Qudaa. So after he sent out ﷺ those 3,000 men, you can imagine now there's some degree of greed or a little bit of questioning that, well, he's not as strong as he was. Now the Romans, he has a beef with the Romans. It's a good time to strike. So ﷺ had left in Medina enough people that if he needed to go and neutralize a threat, he had them. And amongst them was Sayyidina Amr. And during the time of Mu'tah, he had to send out Sayyidina Amr with 300 men to go and neutralize a threat of the tribe of Qudaa that were putting together a force or an army of a few tribes to try and raid Medina. This is what he had to live with, alayhi salatu wasalam. Like when we talk about his story, we're talking about ethics and principles and values and salah and siyam and sadaqah and hajj, amazing. But he, in his life, alayhi salatu wasalam, it was an ongoing struggle of trying to stay alive and tried to keep the nation that he had built from being annihilated and destroyed by those who wanted nothing good for it. So he had to send Sayyidina Amr ibn al-As towards this group. He would go, radiallahu anhu, with his troops. He would push back, and then he would find that, no, the numbers, it's not going to work. He has 300, these people are in the thousands. It's not going to work at all. So he sent back to the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. I'm going to tell you the story just for a reason, because Khaybar we'll talk about inshallah next week. Saying, Ya Rasulullah, I don't have enough people. Amr was like that. Khalid was never like that. If you study their lives in terms of warfare, Khalid never asked. You gave him 1,000, he went with 1,000. You gave him 100, he went with 100. He never asked more. Amr was different. He was more analytical. He would stand and say, nope, I need more. I'm doing the math, this is not going to work, I need more. And he did this for the Prophet ﷺ, he did this to Abu Bakr and Umar later on. Sayyidina Khalid was different. That's why he's talked about a little bit differently. Because never in his life did he say, nope, I need more people. He never asked for more people. Somehow, he always got the job done. If you want to study his life in terms of other battles he was involved in, you'll find that he was the person that was sent usually to get the job done if it was a problem. So alayhi salatu wasalam would send Abu Ubaidah, Amir ibn al-Jarrah with another 200 people to go and help Sayyidina Amr ibn al-As. And here's why I'm telling you the story. So they get there. And now there's some degree of difference of opinion. Who's leading this group of 500 now? Who's leading? So the men are disagreeing, saying, no, you were sent to help us, so we're Amr is the leader. The other group is like, no, we were sent to take over, so Abu Ubaidah is the leader. And they're like, okay, each group have their own leader, which doesn't work in war. فأبو عبيدة رضي الله عنه أمين هذه الأمة رضي الله عنه taught everyone something. فقال أما والله قد أمرني رسول الله عليه الصلاة والسلام إذا أتيتك أن نتطاوع فلا نختلف. I was told by the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام when I was sent that we work it out amongst us with love. التطاوع it comes from the same root of doing something for volunteering. نتطاوع من الطاعة. طاعة is obedience. نتطاوع one of us give up for the other one. وألا نختلف, and that we don't fight amongst it. فإنك إن عصيتني فلم تطعني فإني مطيعك ولا أعصيك. Indeed, if you refuse to follow me or learn or accept me as a leader, then I will definitely not disobey you, and I will allow you to be my leader. فأطاع أبو عبيدة عمرا. Sayyidina Abu Ubaidah offered Sayyidina Amr ibn al-As the leadership, and he led radiallahu anhu. فكان يؤمهم في الصلاة. Sayyidina Amr, even though he accepted Islam a few months ago, he is leading prayer. Behind him is Sayyidina Abu Ubaidah, who accepted Islam maybe the 4th day of Bi'athah. But he didn't have a problem with that radiallahu anhu. And this is the nufus of the early Sahaba. When you study people like Abu Bakr and Uthman and Ali and Zayd and Abu Ubaidah and Sa'd and Abi Waqqas, and these are people whose hearts were tamed by the Prophet ﷺ's ongoing care, his ongoing attention to them, and teaching. They learn that you never let your ego in the middle of it. You never let your ego ruin something that's going to harm. You don't let the Muslims be in a state of khilaf, the Muslims be in a state of disagreement and lack of unity and working against one another because you want to be the head of the movement, or your name has to be stuck there, that you're the one who did it. So he allows it now. And they got the job done. And they were able to neutralize Qudaa, which was actually quite a large group. Some historians point out there was maybe 12,000 men that were being assembled. But before they were put together, Sayyidina Amr and Abu Ubaidah with the 500, they were able to destroy their campsite, like before it actually happened, and follow them along and get rid of them. So before they became a threat. But had they spent time fighting about who's the leader and needed to spend a few days to do this, then the story would have been very different. I say this, I tell you this story, even though I don't have it up there. I tell you the story that happened during this period because we have this problem within our Muslim communities everywhere. Okay? And not just Muslim communities, as humanity in general. It's not just a Muslim problem, it's a human problem. But definitely for us as Muslims, we struggle with this. We struggle with giving up something that is egocentric for the betterment of the group. We struggle with kind of allowing someone else to take the lead when it doesn't really make a difference. The goal is just to achieve the outcome. The goal is just to make sure that we get where we're going. regardless of who's standing up front and who's carrying the microphone and who's the person who's going to be able to gloat, to walk around. No, we have to learn what Sayyidina Abu Ubaidah taught that day. قال ولا يختلف المسلمون. And I won't allow the Muslims to be in a state of ikhtilaf, of fighting amongst themselves and not able to see through the command of the Prophet ﷺ. Next week, inshallah ta'ala, we'll begin talking about the Battle of Khaybar, which is another extremely interesting and beautiful story within the Prophet ﷺ's life. Another threat that he had to go and deal with ﷺ, another group that was assembling warriors to fight him ﷺ. So you can see after Hudaybiyah, he's going to spend quite a bit of time making